Hello and welcome to Planet Watch as we discuss our movement into Cancer, plus some other things that are coming up that I think you need to know about. So I'm joined, as always, by the lovely Mary Jane Staudenmann from
Good
Geneva.
morning, good afternoon, everyone. Hello.
Hello, hello. So Mary Jane is of course, an astrologer, has been doing that for decades and decades, based in Geneva, Switzerland. Hey, Mary Jane.
How you doing?
Doing good, doing good. I can't believe that we're looking at Cancer already.
I know it's going just really, really fast, but it's surprisingly fast when you consider how life has been slowed down in other departments. But that's the name of the game. We're ever forward, huh?
Right, ever forward, ever forward. And not only are we in Cancer, but we're staring at the solstice coming up, which is like halfway through the year. Well, yeah, it is, isn't it?
Yeah, it is for sure. This, as it happens, this ingress, the sun coming into Cancer, is on the same degree where it's all happening together with this solar eclipse. There's something to be said about this solar eclipse. Before we go any farther, I'm going to be concentrating on this month of Cancer as we're getting into it, and some things that we should be looking at through the month. But we need to remember too that the solar eclipse is a time, every solar eclipse sets up a new paradigm, a new way of thinking about what's going to be happening. It's a new trigger mechanism for events, future events from now until the next solar eclipse, which is typically probably 6 months down the line. I don't know. I haven't looked at that one yet, but we've got enough on our plate as it is. But this all to say that while we are going to see a lot of action this month, the references are going to be lasting until several months now down the line, probably well into next winter. So let's talk about this new. It's all happening then with a new moon, which is rather exciting for any ingress, any sun coming into a new sign and happening right on top of a new moon. This is a huge surge of energy. The new moons always start functions, start things, and giving us a burst burst of growth potential, uh, energy potential that we can theoretically put wherever we want to. That's
Wonderful.
probably important now because there are a lot of things going on that people are needing to
Yeah.
stay stay calm about, stay functional, and stay directed in
Yeah.
their actions in the next few weeks, the next few months, in fact.
Sure.
Um, Let me just point out while we're talking about Cancer in general, this is a water sign. It's the cardinal water sign, that is to say, huge surges of emotional energy. The water signs are involved with our emotions and our emotional reactions, actions and reactions, and our general emotional setup. Everyone is turned on differently on an emotional level. So as we get involved in Cancer, our emotional approach to life is going to come up to the surface, and has a tendency in the water signs to take over from the logical, more functional, day-to-day material world. So our emotions can overwhelm our logical approach to life, and it's something to think about as we're going through this period, where tensions are high already. And we can see in all kinds of levels, on a personal level, on the economic and political level, our emotions will tend to outride a logical approach to things we need to be looking at and taking care of. Something to think about.
Hmm. It's definitely something to think about. So just kind of recap up to this moment is that we've got the Cancer coming in and a
Mhm.
solstice and a new moon.
Right, exactly. It's
A
a
lot.
it's a power package. It's a power package, which is not to say that, which is also to say that it's rather an explosive weekend that I think we're going to be looking forward to, the 20th, 21st of June. As I say, tempers rise, emotions can get out of hand, and especially under this new moon. Well, we'll see where it goes. But anyway, it's an interesting start to this Cancer energy. There are some other things that are tied up with the Cancer, the basic Cancer energy. We're tied up with family events and family situations. Cancer is a historical time. We're looking back at our family roots and at old family stories. You know, this is a time when you sit down and talk to your parents, talk to your siblings, talk to people, try to get things straight. I think emotions are going to run fairly heavily, but we can imagine through this period, in any case, a lot of reunions that may go more or less well.
Mm-hmm.
And it will be up to everyone then to clear the decks, to really keep the communication on a correct level, on a happy level, a healthy level. And this will help get a lot of family detritus taken care of through this period.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's with that in mind, and on a slightly larger scale, it's also a period where we're going to see new surges of nationalism. You know, it's patriotic. It's very heavy into what's mine and what's been always mine, and I'm going to take care of that. And it's a little bit difficult to get out of that nationalistic feeling, that very parochial kind of thinking.
Right, right, right. Yeah. I mean, we have a problem with that at least in the United States,
Yes.
already. Right.
And then a lot of countries, oh, we're seeing this in South Africa, we're seeing this in Australia, we're seeing this in several countries here in Europe. There's a new resurgence of this overly patriotic flag waving thinking that doesn't allow for difference. I'm going to differences between people. I want to talk about that in a minute with this important movement of Saturn that's going on these days. But all of this to say that it's time to practice a new logic and keep our wits about us as we're looking at these different approaches to other people, not only to our family members, but just to other people in our communities and between communities.
Right. I mean, we're in the middle of um, an ascension. I mean, really, we're in this shift in consciousness up to 5D reality, and well, I suppose that's why all this is coming up right now, is because we need to look
Sure.
at it so that we can clear it, and so we can move past it. But it does need to just kind of, the pendulum needs to swing there, I suppose, that we can
Certainly,
deal with it.
certainly.
We
But
can't deal
it's
with it.
hard work, and it takes a bit of concentration on everybody's part.
It does. It does.
To finally get over this, uh, protect ourselves, protect what we know too well, and be willing to admit that there's something beyond these borders, beyond this thinking, these
Right.
walls.
Right. We're humans as opposed
Mm,
to Americans, as opposed to Europeans, as opposed to
th-
Africans, as opposed to South
that
Americans, right?
for
We're
sure.
humans rather than white, black, brown, etc. We're humans, right?
Precisely, and that's really the bottom line. That's maybe now is a good time to get involved with this important movement of Saturn going back and
Do
forth,
it.
trying out its wings in Aquarius,
Okay,
which
yeah.
is,
What's going on with Saturn?
well, it's major. First of all, a couple of months back in March, we saw this first movement of Saturn going into Aquarius. He's going to do a little number. He's going up to 1.5 degrees into Aquarius before turning back in his retrograde movements. It's kind of like uh, I want to say it's a butterfly that's coming out of his chrysalis and going to try to get clean, but this butterfly's too scared, and he comes running back into his cocoon for a little while, and then in September he'll wander back out and try the real world. But this Saturn, meanwhile, we've got a couple of 3 months to look at Saturn in Aquarius, and it does amazing things. This movement of Saturn in Aquarius is the meeting point between all of the liberty, the eccentric thinking that can go into Aquarius. Aquarians are known marginal people living on the edge, trying new things, invention, innovation, free will, free thinking. And there's a humanitarian, encompassing attitude with Aquarius. Now, Saturn is sort of the opposite of that. Saturn, it seeks to make limitations, to condense this energy, to fall back on old ideas and old authoritarian thinking. So it's an interesting time, and we've seen in history that a lot of bizarre things have gone on in these movements of Aquarius. Let me just add in a parenthesis that's important, though. Saturn is the ruling planet, the ancient ruling planet of Aquarius. So it's supposed to be adding a note of logic, a note of organization, a note of logical scientific method to this explosion of innovation and so on that happens in Aquarius. A lot of scientists, important scientists, and especially astrophysicians and people who are looking at new quanta, were born with this Saturn in Aquarius, because it's the attachment of scientific method to all of new thinking that should be doing some good for us. As always, there are two ways to use this Saturn, and they tend to show up all at the same time or one after the other. Carl Jung is an excellent example. He as he broke away from Freud and got involved in new thinking, a more humanitarian and more universal approach to Freud's this really earthbound psychoanalysis, where he was talking about the single ego. Jung wanted to look at the collective ego, the collective unconscious, and he was drawn into this slowly but surely, with his different, using his Saturn in Aquarius, finally to check things out. He was the great adventurer. He was the great traveler. He wanted to go everywhere and look at different civilizations and see what their dreams were like and what we all have in common in our unconscious minds. The list goes on. He's a wonderful example because initially he didn't want to get involved in any of that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But in reading
along.
Nietzsche and reading a lot of people who were freer spirits than he was, he finally came around to this kind of thinking. The list goes on and on. In the 1930s, one of the early times that Saturn was also in Aquarius. This was not only the input of Hitler growing up in becoming a German citizen, launching his party in 1934, but it was also at the same time this incredible nationalist approach of Hitler. But it was also at the same time that Delano Roosevelt was setting up the New Deal and the TVA movements to help Americans get out of the Great Depression. With a humanitarian approach that was all-encompassing. He said, we've got to move the entire, not only the entire country, but also in the entire world with the European tie-ins, economically especially.
So
The next time was in the 60s, in the early 60s, when Saturn was again in Aquarius, and this was literally, in quotes, the age of Aquarius, the birth of the age of Aquarius, and that everyone was looking at. So we've got Joan Baez and Bob Dylan and the other movements, Gloria Steinem, Betty Friedan, who were all activating for a new feminism, a new liberty, a new humanitarian, universal approach to being alive, basically. The
Right. So
19th.
I'm a bit concerned because you talk about Saturn and Aquarius bringing like Hitler and
This
civil
is the
unrest.
other phase. This is the other phase. There are always two sides to the coin. There are always two sides with Saturn in any case. You know, he's going to draw us in. He's going to make our package more compact, much more logical, and it's sort of the antithesis, if you will, of the free spirit that's involved in the Aquarian thinking. So he's there to make logic. He's there to use this rather authoritarian approach to seeking boundaries. The big question with when Saturn especially, but other planets move into Aquarius, and we'll talk about this later, is who defines boundaries? Who defies boundaries? Where are these coming from? You know, what's the basis of our prejudices and our limitations, self-limitations, and limitations on other people? Who says who's marginal and who's not?
Right, right, right. Okay.
This is one
Gotcha.
question that, especially in the second part of this year, we're going to get more and more involved in. But with this incursion of Saturn in Aquarius, already these questions are being addressed right now as we're sitting here. And I think this is going to go on and become more important. We'll talk about that a little later.
Right, right, right. Because you know, we've got Saturn moving into Aquarius, and yet Saturn's going retrograde soon.
Yeah, it doesn't much matter. With Saturn, this only brings us back to back to this thing of, in his case, running back into his old hideout there in Capricorn, where he's the big boss, and he thinks, okay, if I just keep on being big boss, this is going to work. Well, it's not going to work for very long, because as his movement goes back direct, he's going to be more and more curious and more challenged in his old role.
Right, right.
So it's going to happen. This is just really the beginning,
Oh
but
my.
it's interesting. It's interesting to think about. Um, I want to do a little reading, an announcement on our Facebook's page about this particular movement, and a little more in detail about the the equinox and what it's setting up for us. But that'll be on a later date.
Right, right.
Um, yeah, yeah, it's a fascinating period.
It is a fascinating period. So it's going to be like, sounds like through the summer. Could be
Through the summer, I think already through July and probably into August as well, we're going to see an incredible tension as Saturn is trying to get involved in some new rules, but is not he's having to overcome this, again, this very nationalistic my tribe is the best tribe kind of thinking, and we're having to get over this. Now this happens on both sides of the political arguments as
right.
well, and economic arguments. The Black Lives Matters clan has all the answers, and some of the marginal people out there are going to be taking advantage of the arguments going on to wreak havoc.
Right.
Maybe it's totally deserved. They've got their chances, and they've got their merits, and they've got their arguments, but it can go way overboard as emotions just boil over.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
My
absolutely.
scary thinking. And then of course the thing about this already the ingress and this eclipse is that it's happening opposite those terrible planets we've seen so heavily in Capricorn. They're the authorities, the huge heavy-handed militaristic approach to keeping my hands on the reins and keeping our hands on all the possible authority, all the power. So it's again, with this new moon especially, it's the people. The moon is the people. These
Oh,
are the masses. And it's coming just head on into, uh, again, other heavy, really heavy-handed conflict with people in power. And
oh,
this will go on, I think, through July, probably August as well. We seem to have a sort of a hiatus, if I can say that, in September. This is again when Saturn is getting ready to come back into Aquarius, and we'll try to make some order through there. But I'm thinking that through September we're going to have some
conflict.
through August, through July and August, the little calm in September, and possibly again a sort of a nice period where we can sit down and talk a little bit in October.
Good.
But coming back to this month of Cancer, so I'm thinking that in a couple of weeks, or toward the 24th, as a little bit farther, the 24th or so of June and the first part of July, this is when the moon is going to be opposite those planets in Capricorn. And we're going to see again some sort of noisy manifestations, noisy
Protests and
group meetings, right? Manifestations out there.
right.
And yeah, I just would like everyone to just try to keep a lid on. I think it's important for us to use a sense of logic. It's not the time to boil over and lose all possible communication. It's going to be really so important.
Right.
And from the health aspect as well, do your masks, do your distance, do this stuff, because the meeting of Jupiter and Saturn, as it turns out, is an important time for infectious diseases, massive in infectious diseases.
Oh,
So we're not necessarily out of
we're not
out
at
of trouble yet.
right. Okay, so when you say that this is a time for infectious diseases, this is a time then when they can be even more virulent, more rampant?
Well, we saw this first connection between Saturn and Jupiter a couple of months ago, when things really were boiling over with
Right.
the COVID. Um, I think there will be another round of this, September, October probably, but certainly less important than this one.
Mhm.
So it's important though right now to keep a lid on this infection, to not get, because there are a lot of carriers out there that just haven't been sick.
Absolutely.
And so it's so important to realize this, and to keep our distance. It's important because a lot of people are going to be able to infect us without even wanting to, or not even knowing that they are. So
Hmm.
I'm saying, I know I'll take care of my germs, you keep care of your germs, and maybe we can keep out of each other's way.
Good. So I want to kind of circle back a bit to, just kind of keeping a lid on some of the tensions and keeping the lines of communication open. It was just reported that there was another killing of an unarmed Black person in Atlanta by the police. He was
Oh
running
no.
away and
Yeah.
was shot and fatally killed. And then there have been reports of two lynchings of young Black men in California. And so I don't even know where to begin with this, because we've seen so much in way of protesting police violence, and especially targeting um,
Mhm.
unarmed Black men, that this is such a problem in our country. And
Uh-huh.
the protests, of course, have been resulting from that. And the Black Lives Matter movement, very rightly so, is stepping forward and saying, okay, this has got to stop.
Yeah.
So is there any indication about justice, about these things being able to shift and move?
in the immediate future, as I said, I think we're going to involve this month and next month possibly in a continuation of just the manifestations, just the group meetings or trying to meet, and I don't see any good connection. The communications doesn't seem to work, and this is a tragic thing when people can't even approach the problems logically and just sensibly. The problem with we've seen this all over. The city governments want to close down on the police. Repression again, repression. That it just doesn't work, especially with a group that's armed already and rather full of itself and sure that they can get away with all kinds of really bad thinking. There's too much hatred. There's too much white supremacist thinking within these various police corps, I think. And so as you try to repress this energy, again, you're just creating time bombs.
Right.
It's really going to come back to, again, a question of education, a question of challenging their thinking. You know, we've got to come back to saying, what are you thinking all this time? And I think that's the only way we're ever going to get anything done on this question, at least for the months to come.
Right. Yeah, I've always felt that strong arm tactics are not effective. You know, all they do is tamp things down. They do not provide alternatives. For example, like if you're having a problem with young people spray painting graffiti and getting into fights and, you know, taking drugs and things like that, rather than just making them stop everything, because that energy's got to go somewhere, right? And
Totally.
providing them all safe alternative things to do, provide community centers that are safe and attractive and supervised, right? Rather than just, because that energy, like I said, that energy does have to go somewhere. So when we try to wrestle the ground and cut it off, it's just going to spill out in some other avenue. So
precisely.
I'm just kind of looking for a little bit of hope.
I know it's going to take some time. I feel very good about this next movement, especially the new direct movement of Saturn into Aquarius, because this is about the only place where real new thinking can catch on, right. And where we're going to find directed innovation, directed change.
Yeah.
So it may take until September, but sorry.
When does Saturn go direct in Aquarius?
Well, it's going to go direct again on the 17th of December. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's going to be a minute after our.
So yeah, we just sit and wait. Time does go pretty fast, but yeah, I've got a lot of stuff to look at between now and then.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, and it's just, it's staying the course. It's not letting up on, working for justice and asking people to get along and doing our best to educate and inform and tamp down racism, giving alternatives and teaching rather than saying, you don't be racist.
You don't be racist. Yeah, that one doesn't work.
No, that does not work. So it's education and inclusion. So, right. So we've got our work cut out for us, but that at least gives me hope.
I just want everybody to be very careful with their persons and with their people and with their lives on this weekend of the 20th and 21st of June. We've got a nasty square Mars to this new moon going on that particular weekend, and even right now before. And so this is an invitation into bad thinking, again, energies and our relationships and our thinking getting out of hand. There's a lot of verbal argument, which is maybe the good news, but a lot of out there in the streets arguments going on this weekend as well, on the 20th, 21st. So keep cool.
Yeah.
Think twice before you say anything. Think twice before you let your anger just totally overrun your good thinking and overrun any possible good feeling that you can have, that you can set up with people around you.
Right.
That's at home, that's in the street, that's in your car, that's in everywhere. And yeah, especially in your cars, maybe we have to think about that. And that's really the only way we're going to get through this period of high anguish.
Absolutely. So think twice before you get lippy. Think
Yeah, that's it. That's
before you
it.
do something that could escalate or go horribly south. Right.
Quite right.
So this is getting charged up to be quite an explosive weekend. So I do just ask everyone to be safe and be on guard, be aware. Sounds like we've got some good things coming up as well in terms of setting the stage for more humanitarian approaches, something like really big and sweeping that could be positive for everyone, just like the age of Aquarius was in the late 60s, or
Sure, sure.
FDR's New Deal. So this sounds
Exactly.
good. This sounds really good. Well, fantastic. Thank you, as always, for letting us know what the astrological forecast is going to be
Oh,
coming up. We need to know these things.
hang in there, guys. Hang in there.
Hang in there. Absolutely. Well, we will see you again in Leo then. That's next.
Right, right.
Excited.
Meanwhile, have a great uh, music festival. If you are into the solstice, here is always a big music festival all over Europe.
Oh, fun.
And a lot of things have been slowed down this year. But I understand that in spite of the municipal turning on, turning off of the different affairs, there'll be a lot of kind of wild things going on in the streets, volunteer and improvisational music going on. I'm hoping so, and I hope the weather will be right. So I
Oh,
hope you all have a good time too.
oh, absolutely. And we don't know when people are going to be watching this. So we could be watching this well into the summer. But if you're watching this prior to June 20th, which is the solstice,
Right.
Radiate Wellness is doing a summer solstice circle. We're doing that on Facebook Live. So check out the Radiate Wellness Facebook page, the Radiate Wellness LLC, that is, Facebook page. And we will be doing that Saturday morning. So I hope everybody can join us if you're watching that prior to June 20th. All right. Thank you so much, Mary Jane, for being with me today.
It's been a real pleasure. See you in Leo.
See you in Leo.